YouTube, welcome back to another video. It is me. I've just got a hat on because I got butchered. I got trimmed the other day. You know what? Who cares? Yeah, I got butchered bad. I don't know if you can. I think it looks worse on camera. Well, that's what I'm telling myself. And yeah, went for a trim on Tuesday, and Boss Man didn't do me very well. So it is what it is. We'll rock with it. You're not here for the trim. Hopefully, you're here to learn and me to give you some more value in regards to should you train like a hybrid athlete. Now, the word hybrid athlete has probably been about prominently, probably for the last few years. You think of like your Nick Bare, Fergus Crawley. I like to think that I was a bit of a pioneer myself. I remember doing my first half marathon while still training in the gym in 2021. That's when I did my first half marathon. So maybe I'm a bit more of an OG when it comes to this hybrid athlete training. I just have not rose to the fame of some of the names before. So enough the waffling on. When we look at what is hybrid training, okay, this is just if you're completely new to this style of training, okay, or you're unsure, it's combining strength and endurance training. You were trained to be strong, physically fit, a bit more functional in terms of your movements. You're lifting weights, you're doing running or some form of cardio. It could be cycling, swimming, triathlons, this, that, and the other. You're not a specialist, but an all-rounded athlete. See what I've done? I've linked it to the name of the coaching brand. And it's just obviously a case of spending certain phases of your training focused on a certain discipline. Okay, and I will go through that in a second. So, move over to this side of the screen. What are the pros of hybrid training? Now, these are what I have found myself from doing this for the last coming up to 4 years. And ultimately, I'm going to give you the pros, why I enjoy training this way, why I think it's the best way to train, etc. But then also the cons, because, unfortunately, there are going to be a few positives and there's also going to be a few negatives. So when we look at the pros of this way of training, it is a well-rounded style of training because you're going to be building muscle, you're going to be getting stronger, you're going to be improving your heart health, and you're overall going to be more conditioned. Okay, it's also a little bit more engaging. This is why I initially got into it. I just got bored because of the whole COVID of lifting weights and moving from A to B. It just got a little bit tedious. So I wanted something that was a little bit more interesting and gave me something else to focus on as opposed to just aesthetics, moving weights, etc., etc. Okay. It also, I find, gives a little bit more real life, more functional element to things. So it's a little bit more everyday work. So I quite enjoyed that aspect, and then also it gives me a bit more energy as opposed to just going in, being quite rigid, being quite buckled into a machine, moving from like I've said, certain movement patterns. This just gave me a little bit different, okay? And it also brought me back to my sporting past of growing up when I was younger. So I quite enjoyed doing that, and it gave me a bit more energy, whilst obviously also improving body composition. So definitely since doing this style of training, it's kept me relatively lean all year. Probably around maybe Christmas time, New Year time, I'm a little bit heavier, a little bit fluffier, just because normally that time of year, especially last year after the Ironman, I sort of took my training a little bit less serious, gave myself a bit of downtime, enjoyed a bit of food, and but on the whole, definitely a lot leaner, a lot more athletic, although I do still run like a fridge. If we look at the cons of hybrid training, because this is not going to be for everyone, the recovery element is certainly something that can be quite challenging. Okay, a lot of training load, therefore you want to make sure that you are recovering well, you're resting well, and you're obviously focusing on those just as much as you're training. Now, it's not going to be the same for everyone, but some people may neglect these for social events and other reasons, which I probably wouldn't agree with. But this style of training will definitely require a high amount of focus on your rest and recovery. Another con is going to be you're going to progress slower in one area because your focus is on multiple disciplines, okay? Because you're not solely focused on aesthetics, running, swimming, certain strength on a movement. It might be a little bit slower than if you had a designated program specifically for that endeavor, okay? So progress can be a little bit slower because you're a little bit more spreadly thinned, if that makes sense. And it can be also from a programming aspect harder to do. Like I first started training this way and I programmed it quite poorly, although I was a personal trainer at the time. It's just because I didn't have that knowledge. I was doing I thought I could get away with doing a lot more than I needed to, especially with the running perspective. And then ultimately in the gym, my sessions were because of fatigue and everything else, because I wasn't recovering as well as I should have done. So it can be a little bit harder to self-program, and that way you're not going to make the progress that you may want. So move back down here. Check that. Some fade, that is. So who is hybrid training for? So I believe hybrid training is for those who want to be a little bit more athletic and are not so focused on just the aesthetics. Okay, so I obviously did a photo shoot in 2023, hence the photo here on the right hand side. And although it was great and a fantastic process, and obviously I learned a lot on the journey, I realised I wasn't really that bothered on how I looked to a certain degree. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to be sort of 30% body fat and, you know, really skinny, etc. But it wasn't my main driver. It didn't get me up and, you know, I want to be less body fat today as I was yesterday. That wasn't really for me. Believe it or not, I'm actually not that vain of an individual. You know, although there's a lot of topless photos going on, it's also good marketing. So, you know, I've got to think with a business head sometimes when it comes to posts. Although some of the recent followers and comments and messages I get on some of my posts are probably not my target audience, but we'll let that one slide. So yeah, if you want to be more athletic, not just look a certain way, but maybe have more of a performance goal, this is definitely for you. Especially if you're maybe some sort of a former athlete or played sport for a high level. You know, I've got lots of clients that probably play football. Well, I did play football at quite a high level, semi-pro, till they're like mid-20s, late 20s, and then sort of died off. And this hybrid element just gives that competitive edge back, whether it be high rocks, whether it be some form of race, looking good, the whole shebang. It's also designed, for maybe people who are a little bit busier and want a style of training that's going to fit around their lifestyle. You know, they might only be able to train maybe 4 times a week. So 2 full body strength sessions, 2 runs, 1 low intensity, steady state, 1 more interval based. Perfect. There's 4 sessions a week, which isn't going to take you that long. And that way you can do that whilst obviously balancing it around your life. And it also is for runners that want to improve their strength and maybe lifters that want to get into fitness. Who is it not for? Obviously, I know I spoke about this earlier, and the image of big Dorian Yates. This is not for those of you who want to be good at a specific element of fitness, okay? So that is like, if you're wanting to do bodybuilding, which is something I used to want to do, running would have been the last thing I would have been doing, because to me, it was going to make me catabolic. I was going to lose muscle mass. My legs were going to fall off because running was so bad. Joint issues, everything else. Okay, my sole focus was to look and be a certain way. So if you're into powerlifting, you squat, bench, deadlift, and all training accessories for that and everything else should be your number one priority. Okay, rather than trying to balance this with X, Y, and Z. So if you're someone who's competitive in those 2 sports or sports similar, then you probably want to stay away. Also, those of you who are elite runners chasing personal bests. Okay, now I know obviously strength training and running can definitely be combined. However, if you're someone who is, you know, running elite levels of running events, then, you know, balancing strength training for hypertrophy, or, you know, it's going to be very different for that type of individual than, say, someone who's a bit more of a casual runner or wanting to improve. Okay, because if you're an elite runner, your strength sessions are going to be very, very different to if you're someone that wants to be more of a hybrid, all-rounded athlete. And then also someone who's maybe a complete beginner without a fitness base. I would start off with the basics and then build from there. So maybe a couple of gym sessions to begin with for a few months, learning the fundamentals, the strengths, etc., and then slowly incorporating some cardiovascular work. So with this one here, it'd be a case of after a few months, you would then probably be applicable, or someone that would consider doing some hybrid training. So should you train like a hybrid athlete? Well, that's a big question. And at the end of the day, I'm not here to tell you what to do, because if anyone told me what to do, I tend to do the opposite to a certain degree. So if you are someone that wants to be strong, fit, all-rounded, enjoy training, it's very social as well. You know, it's a very popular way of training at the moment. Run clubs, high rocks, workouts, different gym, doing, you know, events, this, that, and the other. Then yes, it's definitely for you. If you want to specialize or compete, so if you want to be an IFBB pro bodybuilder or a UK BFF novice bodybuilding champion, probably just stick to the bodybuilding side of things, same as being powerlifting, etc., or Olympic weightlifting at a high level. Okay, maybe not. Okay, if you're still unsure, then I can help you decide. Okay, how am I going to help you decide? I know I've just told you that I won't tell you what to do, but I can give my input. So what we've got here is a completely free hybrid starter pack training guide, which basically just talks you through how to go about combining your strength training with your endurance training. Okay, I'm going to pop the link for this in the description below. It's completely free. It's a full guide, training, recovery, nutrition, example workouts, the full shebang. Okay. If you want something a little bit more specific and a little bit more tailored, then in the description below as well, I will leave a link to book a call with myself completely for free, 15 minutes. And what I can do is just answer some questions that you may have on this training protocol, and I can give you a few ideas as to potentially how I can help with our online coaching program that I offer. So both of those links will be in the description, and hopefully this video has given you a little bit more insight into whether you should train as a hybrid athlete or whether you should ignore everything I've just said and train the way that you want. But hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.